Hey everybody, it's Austin Ward for Lettermen Row, back with another Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. We've got the man himself, the Ohio State star, NFL star, Beanie Wells. We're breaking down the All-Urban Meyer team today, Beanie.
Very interesting.
Not a lot to discuss in the middle of February. We already talked about off-season workouts a couple weeks ago, Beanie,
Right.
but got an interesting question, an interesting request a couple weeks ago for something that they wanted us to talk about on this show. So giving Byers that plug, and they're just going to be the sponsor of the All-Urban Meyer team.
All right.
Since they're sponsor of the show, they get to do this. I posted mine on Lettermen Row earlier this week, and now I posed you to you right before we go on.
Uh-huh.
And you said you could do it off the cuff. So
Off
it's the All-Urban Meyer Buckeyes from Beanie Wells right now.
So you already gave your team.
I gave my team.
All right, so this is
The first one is right off the bat. Like this, I didn't
Quarterback.
think there was much debate. It's quarterback.
yeah. I mean, I think that's an obvious. Dwayne Haskins is the guy for the All-Urban Meyer team. Second one, easy off the bat, Ezekiel Elliott. You watch what he's done over his
Yeah.
career. He's probably going to end up in the NFL Hall of Fame if he keeps up the pace in
Right.
which he's at. From a wide receiver standpoint, that's a little bit tricky. You obviously want to say Michael Thomas, but if we're talking about production while at Ohio State, is Michael Thomas that guy?
He didn't get the targets, and I wrote that in my version because I have Can't Guard Mike in there.
Right.
But I remember just the way he played, a few of those toe tapping touchdowns. Like you saw first round
Right.
talent.
No
he didn't
question.
even get drafted in the first round, but I saw that in college, and I was like, I can't leave him off. There's no way.
So again, I'm making an All-Urban Meyer team. I guess I don't have to worry about what he did then because he had a completely different. He'll have a completely different quarterback on his team.
Dwayne's throwing the ball.
Exactly. So give me Michael Thomas as my number one receiver. My number two receiver.
All right, here's what I did, and here were the candidates.
Yeah, give me yours so I can.
All right, so this is because the first ones have all been the same. That's still my team so far.
Right.
My debate here, and I'm not going to tell you who I picked. So here are the options that I had for there. Devin Smith, Paris Campbell, you have Evan Spencer for the do-it-all, you have Terry McLaurin maybe in that mix, and Corey Philly Brown. To me, I didn't think there was anybody else. I picked Devin Smith because when he was at his best, I don't think that I've ever seen a home run deep ball threat, the ability to track the
You wasn't
ball.
going to tell me who you picked.
I couldn't resist. I wanted to give you more time, so I'm just going to jump in and tell. I went with Devin Smith because the way he played that deep ball, I don't think there's been anybody like, even not just at Ohio State, in the last 10, 20 years of college football, I think he's the best deep threat that there's been.
Yeah, I mean, I got to go Devin Smith too because when you talk about, like you said, the deep ball, and then you talk about the consistency in which he did it at. I mean, it was like every time he was out there, all he was doing was catching a 50-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
And then give me my three. I'll pick me Paris Campbell as my number three receiver.
So I jumped in there and I deviated a little bit. I wanted to designate the H-back, and that was another way that I thought Paris Campbell could get in there. Obviously, that's what I went, and now you know where I put him, right?
Man, yes. I'm screwing up right there.
Well, that's okay, right? You were doing off the cuff, but there's a lot of options too.
Right.
That's the point. It's a very talented team. So I have Curtis Samuel, and then I got to thinking, well, it's wild now that I have an All-Urban Meyer Buckeye team, and Braxton Miller is not going to be on it.
That is really crazy to really think about. But, I mean, we can't pit him at quarterback because we have the one guy there. Then when you look at the receivers that we had, I mean, it's not really there. So I'm taking Paris Campbell off. I can't even believe I'm saying that. This is a guy that has the only 1,000-yard receiver we've had since Michael Jenkins, which is nearly 20 years ago. So, yeah. I had to take Paris Campbell off, and I got to pick Curtis Samuel in there as my H-back number three receiver.
I had people, ask me about that yesterday, and I'm like, hey, I mean, this is my first team. That doesn't mean that the backups aren't pretty freaking good too. Like, there are a lot of good options here. So I ran through the offensive line there with Taylor Decker and Mewhort at tackle. Got interesting there with the guards and center because I think you can make some interesting cases based on the way that their careers played out. I had Norwell actually in there at guard. Not a lot of people may have. Billy Price, I stuck him at guard, and I gave at center Pat Elflein the nod. I think there's a really good case for Corey Linsley as well.
Right.
But then, you get into this, those debates about, well, did you have to play center for more than a year or whatever. That was the way I broke down the offense.
So I'm going to take, obviously, I'm going to go with Pat at my center. Give me Billy Price at my guard. I'm going to switch it around. Give me Michael Jordan at my other guard.
Okay.
I thought Michael Jordan did really well at the
3-year
guard
starter,
position.
yeah.
Exactly. I thought he was much better of a guard than he was a center. And then Taylor Decker. I'll take Corey Linsley.
Okay. See, it's hard. He's only here 7 years.
maybe Jack. Give me Jack.
Okay.
Yeah, out there. Then tight end. That's a very good one right there because I thought Nick Vanette was really good. and I thought Jeff Ironman was really good, but both of those guys were underutilized here at Ohio State. So which one do you go with? Damn. Give me Jeff.
I have Jeff as well.
Give me Jeff.
So I love this. So we're come up with this idea for the show. Lettermen Live brought to you by Byers Auto. We've now got Beanie's all-offensive team. I think the defense in the front seven is pretty, maybe there's one spot that's really up for grabs, but when I went through, I did not have a lot of debate until I got to the secondary.
Okay, so give me the Bosa brothers at my defensive ends.
There you go. It's a pretty good start.
Draymond Jones as my nose tackle. Jonathan Hankins.
Okay.
Jonathan
we're 4
Hankins
for 4
my
so
other
far.
one.
Yep.
Oh, so we're good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Linebackers. Ryan Sazier. Darren Lee. Oof.
I've got Raekwon running in the middle.
So do I like that pairing? I got two athletes. Okay, give me Raekwon in the middle.
There you go.
Give me Raekwon in the middle. I was, was I going to throw the other guy down in Miami right now? Why am I forgetting his name?
Jerome Baker.
I was going to throw Jerome Baker.
That's a lot of athleticism right there.
Exactly, but I need a hard-nosed, stout guy right there.
There you go.
Give me Raekwon.
So apologies to our guy, Zach Bourne, but
Yes.
6 starts at middle linebacker, you don't make it. But, that was fun to watch him play there, and he definitely helps us out here at Lettermen Row, obviously. So the secondary gets pretty wild. I think safety, probably going to be easy.
Oh, Malik
But
Hooker.
then you've got a ton of cornerbacks to consider.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of guys. Well, I think this one might keep falling off. Sorry, people.
He's too excited today.
Exactly. I think this is a little bit easy for me. When I watch this guy, this one specific guy, anyways, when I watch him in the league and I watch what he did at Ohio State, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer for Marshawn Lattimore to be the number 1 corner. My second guy, that's where it becomes a little bit tricky. You know who was very good under Urban Meyer that obviously wasn't a high draft pick was Duran Grant. But I don't know if I can pit him there at that spot.
He helped get this going.
He did.
People forget about him and the run of first rounders. But when you had Duran Grant and Bradley Roby, they got it off to a pretty good start.
No question about it. Bradley Roby's my other guy at the corner position. Although he did have that awful game versus Wisconsin that I'll never forget. In most of the big-time situations, Bradley Roby stepped up and played very big. Like I said, Malik Hooker at my safety. Who's going to be my other safety back there? That's where it gets a little bit tricky for me at that last safety spot. And
you got to jump down with another New Orleans Buckeye and get some Von Bell action.
I like Von Bell. He was very good. Can I take a corner and put him at safety?
Sure. This is your team.
Give me Duran, because I really think Duran Grant was very good, but I thought he would have made a much better safety than corner.
Okay.
And I still think that to this day in his professional career.
I had Denzel Ward pairing there with Marshawn and then Von Bell.
Oh, my gosh. How in the hell did I forget Denzel? The guy only had the most craziest rookie season as a DB. I don't know how I forgot that one.
That's how Von Bell got in there. It's like, but you can do whatever you want, right? I mean, this is your team.
Can I make an exchange for Bradley Roby and Denzel Ward?
Sure.
Those guys.
You're not an ink yet, so you're good to go.
Let me put Bradley at safety.
All right, there you go. And that works. That's Beanie's team. I put him on the spot for this, for Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. It's the offseason. We're trying to fill some of that time. I thought this was pretty fun exercise. Now we're going to transition over, talk to Birm, get some of that recruiting update. But Beanie, it's been great having you on here. Thanks for playing along, being a good sport, man.
Thank you. Special teams.
Oh, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I will.
Well, Cam Johnston for me.
All right.
I took Drew Basil on the strength of, like, the kicker spot was really the weakest part of Urban's whole tenure.
Definitely.
I put Drew Basil on there just on the strength, really, of that 52-yarder against Michigan. And my punt returner, kick returner, is Jalen Marshall.
Jalen Marshall was very good, but a guy that I thought, and this is like a hypothetical, obviously we didn't see him do it. I would have picked Braxton Miller back there as my kickoff
well,
return.
you got to get him on the
my
team.
punt return.
All right.
Yeah, I got to get him on there
find him spot
because he's that dynamic of an athlete.
All right. Beanie's making sure that I keep it straight here and recognize that special teams. That's why I've got the football players. He's Beanie. We appreciate him joining us, as always, at Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. Now let's throw it over and get an update from Birm. And now we jump back into Lettermen Row's recruiting headquarters to talk to Jeremy Birmingham on Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. Been about a week since National Signing Day, and that brought 2019 to a close, Birm. But a couple days earlier, we hadn't even talked about it. A pretty huge commitment for Ohio State and Ryan Day. Jack Sawyer, a local product, the number 3 overall recruit in the country, I believe. You know this much better than me, but why is Jack Sawyer such a big deal for the Buckeyes?
Well, the biggest reason is this. Everyone knew Zach Harrison was going to go to Ohio State, right? Everyone knew that Jackson Carman was going to go to Ohio State, right? So Unfortunately,
a
what
little
happens
mislead here
is sometimes that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So when you're a player like Jackson Carman, for example, and everyone knows where you're going, and then all of a sudden you decide, I'm going to see the world and explore a little bit, you head down to Clemson, South Carolina, and fall in love with the Google indoor facilities they have or whatever they're doing. And all of a sudden your entire recruitment changes. And so when you're a player of that caliber, for you to say, hey, I'm not even going to entertain the notion of this recruiting circus the way that so many people do, it's huge for Ohio State, especially because the main competitors for Jack was a kid who didn't want to go that far from home, and he knew that, where, again, Penn State and Michigan, very similar to Zach Harrison's situation. So that type of starting piece, that sort of corner piece for Ryan Day and Larry Johnson and Greg Madison in 2021 is huge, especially because Ohio's 2021 class is shaping up to be very, very good. And to have that key cog in now when it could have been a situation that he waited another year, it's a major weight off of the shoulders for Ryan Day and his staff.
Birm, when you look at those names that you mentioned, they're the top-ranked players in Ohio in their respective classes. Ohio State is always going to make those guys a priority. I think something that you've talked about a number of times and written about at Lettermen Row is that next tier down, how do you manage recruiting within the Buckeye State? When do you offer? When do you take a commitment? How do you get involved with the camps? And there seems to be, even at this early juncture, a little bit of a change under Ryan Day from Urban Meyer. Is that a fair read?
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, the reality is Ohio State has offered something like 175 kids in the class of 2020, okay? That does not mean that 175 kids could commit to Ohio State today. Obviously, there's at least 3 players in the state of Michigan that I know in the class of 2020 have tried to commit to Ohio State that have offers and been told they could not. You cannot do that with Ohio-born kids. So if you're offering, that's a verbal agreement to say we are willing to take you into our class. The Buckeyes have already offered 6 different players in the class of 2021 in Ohio, which is a total departure from Urban Meyer's, regime and how they were handling things. These are players that they have not spent enormous amount of times evaluating at camps. They haven't asked them to come back and camp 2, 3, 4 times. They haven't waited to see how they develop over the course of a year. These are guys that they see on tape, like Najee Story from Solon, Ohio, 6'5", 235-pound defensive end who only played 3 games as a sophomore because he broke his leg. But he, on tape, is so different that they weren't going to play that game and wait and see is he going to develop. And then all of a sudden you have Clemson come in with an offer and that changes everything. So the Buckeyes are seeing these kids, they're getting to know them, and they're pulling the trigger on the offer. Jacob James, the Cincinnati Elder commitment, is a player that is a prime example of that change in philosophy. A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, Ohio State would have told Jacob James in January, make sure you show up at camp on June 8th. We're going to check you out then, and then we'll see if we're going to offer. Mm-hmm. And what happens in that 6 months from January to June is Notre Dame offers and Michigan offers and LSU offers. And all of a sudden, you have 6 months of really good football programs and really good schools starting to develop a relationship with kids that you have put on the back burner. And this is 2019. Recruiting is not the same. These kids are not in love with Ohio State football because they're getting love from every other school in the country. It is not like it was 15, 20 years ago where if you're from Ohio, you only dream of being a Buckeye. NCAA football on PlayStation changed everything. You can play anywhere you want. You can wear any uniform you want. So, the Buckeyes have to stop taking the relationship for granted, which is what they did in the 2018 or the 2019 class with Nick Samac, with J.D. Duplain, with Zeke Correll, all those guys. They sort of just assumed they could just saunter around, and all of a sudden they were all gone. And when they tried to get back, it was way too late.
Birm, you wrote, I think the television deals nationally also had a little something to do with that, not just video games, but that's not really we're not even talking about that, but your point is well taken that those national schools and national kids can take their cherry pick. But sticking in the backyard, you wrote recently at Lettermen Row, I think it was the recruiting question of the day, there's some new names to know, there's some new offers out. What's the most important thing to be aware of if you're following Ohio State recruiting right now? Well,
I think the biggest thing is actually in the class of 2020 and waiting to see what happens with Jaheim Thomas, the defensive end / linebacker out of Cincinnati Princeton? He's the teammate of Darian Henry down there. Those two want to play together in college, and they want to play with Paris Johnson. Obviously, Paris Johnson, Ohio's top-ranked prospect in 2020, is already committed. The Buckeyes love him. They don't want to risk losing him, but this is going to be one of those things where we see if there's a new mentality. Is this staff willing to take a player like Jaheim Thomas, who's a really good player? He's Ohio's 6th-ranked player. But they don't know how he'd fit into the program. They don't know if he's a linebacker or defensive end. He's 6'4". He told me he thinks he could get to 6'6" or 6'7". They don't have any idea what he's going to develop into. Do they take a guy like that now and offer him knowing that he's going to say yes, or do you wait and risk losing out on Darian Henry to a place like Tennessee or Florida or Notre Dame or any of these other schools that have already offered Jaheim Thomas? So that's something I think is really interesting to watch in the next few months. And the other one is A.J. Kirk, the younger brother of Mike Doss, who's a 2021 safety, 4-star kid, ranked in the top 40 players in the country. And of all the early offers in Ohio in 2021, again, there are 6 of them, he doesn't have one, and he's the 2nd-ranked player in the state, despite the fact that he's 6 foot tall, 200 pounds, built like a brick outhouse, and a guy that looks like a prototypical hard-hitting safety, a la his big brother. Yeah. So you wonder what they're waiting for. But I think that's one that Notre Dame, Michigan have already offered. They're already working their way in. And I think that relationship is important because it also ties into Lorenzo Styles Jr., who's a former a Buckeye legacy, whose dad played for the Buckeyes in the 90s. And he's got offers from Michigan and Notre Dame. And they're all kind of tied in together. Jack Sawyer's working on them. But it'll be interesting to see how that class really accelerates heading into the spring.
That's good hashtag stuff from Birm. You can read that every day at LettermenRow.com. We appreciate him joining us from Lettermen Row Recruiting HQ, where he runs his operation up there. I'm downtown here in Columbus. We'll be together again soon. It'll feel so good to be reunited with Birm. For more Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto, down in the future. Thanks for Birm, Beanie Wells for joining us today. We will see you next time.